So in working through these, because you have directed both live action and stop motion, like projects, how does like your personal process differ? Like when you're tackling each one?
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, like my sweet spot, like what I love to work in and what I want to do more of and what I'm slowly doing more of is hybrid work. I love, I said I was inspired by Ray Harryhausen. I love combining stop motion with live action and, finding narrative reasons and world building reasons to do that in a way that it makes sense. And at the end of the day, the processes are not too dissimilar. You're still dealing with a fixed amount of physical assets, physical sets, physical lights. Stop motion is just live action really, really slowly. I think the biggest difference comes into play with pre-production, especially it's a little looser if it's a short film or a personal project and you have the luxury of kind of finding stuff as you go and pivoting and discovering new things because it's all you and you're not hemorrhaging money every minute. But you're editing in the animatic phase. And I know this comes into VFX too with previs and kind of figuring that out. But because stop motion is straight ahead, you can't iterate and do multiple drafts of a shot. So you're really in pre-production, recording the voices, cutting the animatic, and committing to that timing and those angles, more or less before you've shot anything. And if you want to change gears after the fact, it starts to become very expensive. They will, on a big theatrical production like a Leica production or Pinocchio for Netflix, they will do retakes and they will kind of revise stuff as you go. But generally, stop motion for TV is so lean and moves so fast. You have to get used to committing to those choices and then following through, even if, hey, this thing that I thought was a good idea in storyboard 6 months ago, now that I'm getting to set, doesn't feel so great. I have had cases where it became clear we needed to make a change, but for the most part, you try to get it right out of the gate. And I think if anything, like to answer your question about the difference, that has affected my live action directing more than my live action directing has affected my animation. Working in animation for so long has kind of forced me into that mindset of prevising and committing. And, I love it when happy accidents happen on a live action set or we discover a new angle or something. And I'm not gonna, if time permits, say no, but there are some live action directors that come onto set with nothing and block it there with the actors. And I feel like I very much work the other way around of let's just shoot what we need and not do a ton of coverage. And which, I think there are pros and cons to each, but for better or worse, that's kind of how it's informed my directing.
I'm curious about that because you said something there that I think is fascinating. So when you're filming in live action, finding those happy accidents in a performance where it's your actor does something unexpected, or it's oh, that's a little character twitch or a detail that they decide in the moment. How are you thinking to factor that in your pre-production when you're doing a stop motion project? Because it's you have to almost fake the improvisation at an earlier stage. So it's yeah.
For sure. And it's funny you say that because I do love improvisation and, some of the smaller shows that I've done, I'm really good friends with a lot of UCB improvisers and comedians, and something that was initially really exciting to me was how do we take that energy of improvisation or a live performance and channel that into animation. And I think there's sort of two facets. One is when I'm working with voice actors in the booth, I really do try to encourage improv. Mm-hmm. And if anything, that sort of gives you the best of both worlds because, you're not spending money yet, really. You can go completely off the rails in the recording booth and have a great time and go chase a tangent. And then you might end up in the edit using 5 seconds of it, but it's a really funny 5 seconds that you wouldn't have gotten if you just stuck to the script. So, whenever possible, I love to ensemble record and let the actors play off of each other. We've gotten some of our funniest stuff that way. But like on Santa, even with a lot of the actors involved, there were some big names on that show, and scheduling them was hard. But I almost found myself doing this thing where if we were recording with Seth Rogen, he would riff off himself and come up with really funny stuff. And I make a mental note of that. And then if we're recording the other side of the conversation with Sarah Silver, I'd say, hey, Sarah, like Seth actually in the record did something really funny here. And I'd feed that line and let her do her thing. So you're almost crafting like a dual improv performance without the actors being in the room together. I think the other piece of it actually comes in the animators being open and receptive to the ideas that they bring to it. Like every once in a while, an animator will say, hey, what if this character had this prop and did something funny with it during this line? And I'll be like, oh, that's great. Let's call the art department, see if we have one of those, and we'll do it. But, at that point you're on set. So you're trying to run with that while also weighing, well, did we shoot the rest of this scene already? If that prop shows up and then disappears, is it a problem? So, I think there's room for improvisation and kind of finding moments of performance with the animator, but it's a little bit more restrictive once you get to shooting on the stages.